All right, good morning. I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and today we're going to start the process of building the Canteen purse. This was last month's project box. Unfortunately, I didn't get the videos done yet because we had the Waco show going on. And anyway, today's the day. We're going to start with our tooling, okay? So this is the Canteen purse right here. This one has a very nice alligator inlay in it, but in the project box we sent out just a hair-on cowhide piece. Which also looks really good there and isn't near as expensive as that piece of gator right there. So today we're going to worry about tooling this ring right here that goes around the inlay part, and then we'll apply the exact same principles and tool the shoulder strap as well. The shoulder strap, we're not going to tool it in the video because it has the exact same type pattern, the same flowers, same scrolls, same everything, so we'll just follow the same concepts and do our shoulder strap with it. So anyway, today we will tool these, and we might even do a video on actually coloring them. I know we've done those videos before as far as, coloring something after we've tooled it, but you never can do it enough. So anyway, here we go. I'm trying something new. If you see me keep looking this way, I have a screen right here that shows me what the camera's recording, and I'm trying it out. Somebody showed me an app for my camera, basically, that I can put it on a tablet, and hopefully that'll help me to stay on camera and stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, we're going to start with the basic printed pattern and how I prepare the printed pattern for transferring to the leather, how I prepare the leather for tracing, and then tracing it on. Then we'll do swivel cutting, then we'll do tooling. It'll be an all-day thing. So, fast forward if you need to, or join me if you need to, and here we go. All right, so here I have the paper pattern that was sent out with the actual project box. This will be available as a download on our website as well, just a free download. That way if you buy the template to make this project, then you still have this available to you. But when you print it out, it's going to print out like this. So here's the piece for the shoulder strap. Here's the piece for that ring right there. And the first thing I need to do is I need to marry these pieces up so that they fit together nicely and tape them together so I can use them. Okay? So the very first thing I'll do is I'm going to cut off that little margin area on either one of the two pieces. And that'll help me to marry them up a little bit better. Okay. And then I'm just going to line them up where I can tell that they're supposed to join by looking at the typing on it and the picture itself. And there it is right there. Now I found when using a big roll of tape like this, that it's easy to take a couple of small pieces first to hold it together, and then if I need to use a larger piece later. But if I try to put a whole long piece of tape on here, it's a guarantee I'm going to screw it up. There are a few guarantees in my leather work, but that's one of them. All right, now I forgot to grab my, my template piece, and I will cut this outer ring out with my template piece so that I know it fits on my leather just right. So just one moment. Okay, so I've taken my template and I've just put it on the piece of paper. It should fit very nicely within the borders of it there. And I'm just going to cut off all the excess paper. And I'm going to be very careful not to throw it away because, again, my shoulder strap piece is still on there, and I'll need that in a little bit. There we go. Now I've cut it out just like I need it for putting on my piece of leather. So now we're going to start prepping the piece of leather. Once again, I got to save my shoulder strap piece there, so I'll set it aside. The rest of it goes in the trash. All right, now when it comes to my piece of leather, I got a couple of them here. Cut this one out first. It had a bad spot in it, so save it for another project on another day. When it comes to my piece of leather, we have that center piece that's already cut out of the project box, or if you're cutting one out just using the template, save that center piece for a couple of reasons. One, we're going to use it while we tool to just hold this as a nice rigid piece so it's not all floppy. And then two, later on when you do your inlay, you'll want to put that behind it to give it some rigidity and to make that inlay pop out and look really nice. So the very first thing I do is I go ahead and just spray it with the water I'm going to use. Where did my bottle go? I just refilled it a minute ago. There it is. It's one of those days already, guys. So I go ahead and spray it first, and then I tape the back of the leather because it seems to expand a tiny bit when I do it, and it just seems to work better for me if I spray it first and then... There they are. Looking for my paper towels now that I got water all over my desk. And also I probably should wipe this desk down before I turn wet leather over on it because I'm sure it's dusty. Okay. So I always check my napkin. It's cleanish. If it's dirty, then I go ahead and continue cleaning my desk before I put wet leather down on it. Okay. Now, again, I leave the circle in there and I start using the tape to put on the back of it and keep it from stretching while I tool. And generally, I'll pull my tape out way longer than I actually need it to be and basically just tape my piece down to the desk doing that. It's a little bit wasteful, but at the same time, I want to make sure that every bit of it gets taped. And again, this is to prevent stretching when tooling. If you don't tape a piece, you quickly find out that it starts to get kind of bowl-shaped while you tool it and while it gets wet and dry and wet and dry. And putting the tape on it keeps it from doing that. And so it makes it a lot more easy to tool, and then also it doesn't misshape the leather. That's the biggest thing, is if it stretches too much, then it may not fit where we're going to put it later. And we don't want that. So I do that, and then I grab my scalpel, and I just cut all the tape off before I even turn it over, or the excess tape. The reason I do it that way is, help if I turn my scalpel blade over to the sharp side. If I pull this up and that tape wraps around to the front of the leather, then it could possibly leave some sticky residue on the front of the leather, and then that area won't take dye, antique, and finishes as well, and I'll be struggling with it the whole rest of the day. So I'm going to just cut it out as it is. Like that. All right, I will carefully set that aside while I clean all the rest of the tape off my surface here. Now, I use clear packing tape, okay? Now, I have told folks in many of my videos, I'm not a big fan of the blue painter's tape. I know lots of people use it, and I'm not gonna tell you there's anything wrong with it. But to me, it's a lot harder if you've tooled the crap out of a piece and really stuck that tape on there. It rips a lot as you're pulling it up, and I don't like that. This stuff will come off, and you know, each piece will come off without ripping, and that's just gonna make it a lot easier when we're done. Now, that being said, there's a specific type I like to use normally. This is not it. This is just our packing tape that we use here in the warehouse when we're shipping orders. But 3M shipping tape, okay? It's clear 3M shipping tape, and the reason I like it is because when I pull it off the back of the leather, it doesn't leave a sticky residue. Now, on this particular piece, I don't care if I have a sticky residue because I'm going to end up sewing this to another piece. But let's say I was going to tool something that the back side of it would be exposed later. If I use that tape, when I peel it off, I don't have a sticky residue, and that's awesome, okay? So, there's my little tidbit about tape. It can be found anywhere. I always get it at Walmart when I do get it. But again, I don't need to use it too often because honestly, most of the things I'm going to tool are going to end up being lined in some shape or form. Now, all I'm going to do now is put my paper right on top of my leather. Some people use a tracing film and stuff like that. I don't. I just use this piece of paper here and I use my stylus and trace it all in. And I'm just very careful when I do that, that I don't accidentally rip through the paper, okay? So how I manage that is, as I am tracing, I'm always pulling my stylus toward me, as opposed to if I push it away from me, then I'm going to rip through the paper. It's going to be ugly and it's not gonna be good. You can tape this entire thing down and 6 in one hand, half a dozen the other. Some people will tape this entire thing down to their desk and then do all their tracing. My problem is I like to turn it and move it to where things are convenient for me. So a lot of the time I just maintain positive control, pushing the paper down at all times. And if I need to turn the project, then I turn the leather, not the paper, okay? If you're not very in practice with that, it probably would help you if you just tape it to your leather, okay? And as a matter of fact, you know what? Just for ease of everything, let's tape it to our leather. Why not? Okay? So what I'm going to do is just take a couple of pieces like this, and I'm not going to tape it to my desk. I'm going to tape it to my leather. Okay, so I have to kind of slide it off the edge of the desk there so I can wrap that tape around, like so. When I'm tracing this, I'm not going to trace the border. I'll go back later with my wing dividers and just draw in my border, and that's going to work better for me than if I try to trace it. It'll end up much more even and nice if I do it that way. So that is one of my tricks, I guess you can say. I mean, it's not really a trick. It's just something I figured out after trying to trace a lot of borders that didn't turn out right. Okay. Now, as you're taping this, make sure again that you're not getting tape on your finished leather, your grain side of your leather here, because if you do, again, it won't take dye and stuff like that very easily. Okay. And I know that some folks watching this are like, well, duh, Aaron, but some people that are watching this don't know. So I try to put that information out there so that, you know, it helps everybody. All right, so I'm done with my tape for now. Set my tape gun down, throw my paper towel away. So now I'm just gonna start tracing, okay? Generally with a floral piece, I will trace my my flowers and my leaves first, and then I'll come back and do all my scroll work. And then once again, I'm ignoring the border for now. Okay, I will draw the border in with my wing dividers, and it'll be much more even and nice as it goes around. Okay, so I'm going to zoom the camera in just a little bit here. Oh, the other way is in. Again, I'm learning this new system a little bit. There we go. Okay, I'll just start up here with this leaf right here. And I'm going to trace its stem. And then I'll trace it around the outside, around the outside, around the outside. Okay, and right here, I would be going to where I have to push against it. And again, I'll rip my paper if I do. So I'll just come back up here and start pulling back down toward me again. Some folks like to put tape on the back of their paper if they're going to use their paper for direct tracing. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't bother. All right, so I did that leaf. Now I'm going to do this flower, and then I'll do that leaf, and then I'll do the same on the other side, and then I'll trace in all that scroll work. Okay. When I trace in flower centers, flowers, I do not trace the center because I can kind of see where it's supposed to go anyway, and I have a flower center tool that will put that center on there for me, so I don't feel like I need to trace around that little oval in the center of it. So I'm just going to trace the petals themselves. Okay. And then so on and so forth. I'm not going to make you watch me trace this entire thing. It gets very monotonous, and honestly, tracing is my absolute least favorite part of leatherwork. I am not a fan of sitting and tracing. So yeah. So here we go. I'm going to, this flower is now done, and I'm going to turn off the camera. I will trace the rest of it. When I come back, I will show you how I draw in my border with my wing dividers, and then we're going to go straight into swivel cuts. All right, so I have traced, I think, all the lines. Now I'm going to go through here and I'm just going to cut this tape that I taped the pattern down with a little bit at a time so that I can look back and see if anything looks like it's missing. And yes, an entire outline of a leaf didn't get done apparently. So let's trace that on right quick. Okay, found that. Put a little bit more here and then I'll be able to fully check. All right, if I missed anything else, it'll be okay. All the major stuff is there. I can always add a little line here and there if I need. Okay? So I know it's hard to see on the screen, at least it is on my little screen I'm watching over here. I'm gonna go ahead and cut off that excess bit of tape there so it doesn't flop around and get on the finished leather like we talked about before. Okay, now I'm going to show you what I was talking about with the wing divider doing my border piece. Now I did trace in this very bottom of the border where it kind of gets away from the edge of the leather on both sides. So you do need to go ahead and do that. But I'm going to spray it with water again. It's getting a little dry already. Okay. I'm going to take my wing dividers here and I'm going to separate them to the point that I feel like they're going to hit that line where they need to, and I'm going to check them in a couple of locations just to make sure that I'm thinking right, I guess you can say. Okay, and then there are areas where the pattern goes outside the border. You don't want to accidentally run your wing dividers over those areas, and then you'll have lines that you'll have to get rid of later that are difficult to get rid of. Okay, so yeah. So here I go. I'm gonna just start tracing this sucker on here. I'm sorry, my water bottle's right in the daggum way there. Just tracing it along. Making sure to keep that wing divider tight up against the leather so that my border width doesn't change. And then the same thing down the other side here. This tooling pattern, I forgot to mention, was provided by Don Gonzalez. He does me a huge favor drawing some of our tooling patterns because, well, that's just not my forte. I'm not really a big floral tooler, which means I'm also not a very big floral artist. So anyway, all right, now I'm going to come in here, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult because we do have the circle in there. You can try to pop it out if you want to, but I promise you it's taped in there good. But what I'm going to do is just the same thing on the inside, but I may need to redo my width a tiny bit to make sure that it's still right. Okay? I think we're going to be all right here. So I'm just going to run it in there in between the cut out of the circle and the ring piece. That way I don't have to once again pull out the circle piece. Going very slow, being meticulous about it. Don't want to screw up my borders. Okay, and once again, I'm also being careful of those areas that the tooling goes outside the border. I just want to make sure that I'm accounting for that and not accidentally drawing through those lines. It's not a huge deal if you do that, but it does make it a line that later you have to try to rub out or erase or find some sort of way to hide. And it's just easier not to have to do that. And there we go. So now we are traced, we have our border, we have a fly apparently. I try to keep this room pretty cold. There's usually not any flies in here, but anyway, we're traced, we have a border. Next thing we're going to do is throw our flower centers in the center of our flowers, and then we're going to start swivel cutting. So I'll be right back as I transition this desk from a tracing desk to a tooling desk. All right, so I've got it all traced out, got my border drawn in. It's time to start swivel cutting all these lines. But first, when I'm doing a floral pattern, the first thing I do is put my flower centers in, and that way I know when I'm cutting out my lines where to stop my swivel cuts. I'll know where that center is. If I if I go ahead and go ahead and start cutting and then put my flower center in, I risk that maybe I've overcut that flower center and I won't get it in the right spot. So I have an oval shaped flower center. I've done this exact same pattern with a round one and it worked fine, but Don had oval ones drawn into his paper pattern that he drew for us, so I'm going to try it with an oval one. So there's one right there, and there's only 2 flowers on this bad boy, so we'll knock it in the other side, and then it'll be time to start swivel cutting. Okay. Now, as always with a swivel knife, first thing I do is strop it up and make sure that the blade is nice and polished and sharp so that I can make good cuts. You don't want to make bad cuts. I spent the first 10 years of my leatherworking experience with bad cuts, so now I want to make good ones. They're still just kind of mediocre. Anyway, the very first thing I want to do is I want to cut in my border, and then I'll start doing my major features such as my leaves and flowers, okay? So a lot of the time I'll use my pinky and kind of drag along the edge while cutting in my border, and it helps me to just stay spaced, I guess you could say. And then I'll just kind of skip over areas where the pattern, the floral pattern, comes out of the border. I'll come back and get those in just a minute. Okay. I kind of started in the middle, but now I'll start at the other end and work my way back toward the middle there. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to cut my inner border, and I'll just start over here on this side and start cutting. The biggest thing is smooth cuts, okay? On long sloping cuts like a rounded border like this, if you start to get off track, don't just make a swift adjustment back onto track. Just kind of let it guide itself back onto track, and it won't be near as noticeable as if you have a big motion there where you've instantly corrected it. I generally don't do tooling videos very often because honestly, I'm not the best teacher for tooling. I do a pretty good job, but there's guys out there like Don Gonzalez and Joe Mealing and Jim Linnell that's where they strive or thrive, not strive. But anyway, is showing folks how to do floral tooling. That being said, I found a really cool picture the other day of 2 cows, and I really want to tool it, like a kind of a cartoony type picture, and it just looks awesome. So that's going to be one of my next videos coming up. I want to tool those cows. All right, so there we are. Now I'm just going to go through here, and I'm going to start with my major features, such as my leaves, my flowers, cut those in, and then I'm going to cut in all my scroll work after that. So again, not something I feel like you have to watch me do. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep recording, and I'm just going to make it go really, really, really fast. All right, so there we go. There's all my swivel cuts. Now it's time to start beveling and all that fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is, once again, going to kind of reset my bench a little bit, get some tools out that I know I'll need, and we'll start tooling this bad boy. All right, so generally when I'm going to tool something like this, the very first thing I start with is, once again, the flowers and the leaves, the main features. But on this one, I already see a place I didn't cut. I am going to start with the borders. I'm going to bevel the borders down, and that way everything else I do is going to fit within those borders, because that's pretty important. Okay, so it's going to go, according to your screen, it's going to go pretty quick, but I'm just going to bevel my borders, and then when I come back, we'll start actually tooling on this whole project here. So we'll make some magic happen, and as soon as you see this again, the borders will be beveled. All right, so we are going to tool a flower. Now this flower is going to be especially fun because it has turnbacks on every single petal, because apparently Don Gonzalez does not like me. Turnbacks are fine. It's no big deal. All it is where it looks like the edge of the petal turned back over itself. That's why it's called a turnback. But just like any other flower, we're going to do the center shading first. This is a Clay Miller center shader. It's a little bit different than the Barry King style. The lines in it are horizontal instead of vertical. And I just really like it. Not many people have this stamp, so I use it a lot just to kind of set my stuff apart, I guess. But anyway, we're just going to dance it around the center of that flower there, just as we would any other center shader. And all that does is it's going to give the shading and effect of a cone shape to our flower. Okay, make it look like it all goes down into the flower center. Make sure I overlap this tool heavily so that every single strike of it overlaps the others, and there you can't see individual tool strikes, you just see the lines that it creates. Okay, so there we go. It's a good start, good start. All right, now I am going to grab a, it's kind of a thumbprint, except it's pointy on one end. I really like this thumbprint because of its vertical lines and its shape. But anyway, I'm going to take it and I'm going to place it in the scallops of this, these petals, and I want to make sure that I'm tilting it back. I don't want to hold it straight up and down because I don't want to see the actual imprint of the, let me get another piece of leather ready here so I can give some demonstration. When I'm using a tool like this, I don't want to see that. Okay, I don't want to see that entire impression. I want it to fade like that. Okay, so you have to tilt it back to do that. So I'm going to do that as I go around this flower. And generally when you're doing this, you want, every time you hit it, you want the center of it to be pointed directly at, or sorry, the other end of the tool to be pointed directly at the center of your flower. It kind of helps with the flow as it goes around, stuff like that. And honestly, I normally use a pear shader for stuff like this, and this flower actually would work really well with a pear shader, but here we go. So there we go. Currently that doesn't make a ton of sense, but we're going to go ahead and bevel down the undersides of the turnbacks, and that's going to help immensely. Okay, so I'm going to use my use a small beveler here and bevel those down. And then sometimes with these turnbacks, I'll also go back with a low angle beveler, and I'll give it a lot more depth and shading by doing that. So I'm gonna grab me my smallest low angle beveler I have here. Okay, and just as a comparison, this is the normal steep angle beveler. It is a 30-degree angle on it. This is the low angle beveler. It has a 15-degree bevel on it. So you can see the difference there, okay? And I'm going to do that exact same bevel line with the other one. I could have just started out with this one, but honestly, I'm so used to beveling everything twice when I use this that I just don't even think that on small ones like this I could do that. Okay, and all that does, that low angle is going to depress a lot more background, and it's going to give the appearance of more depth and some more shading. And yeah, make it all look deeper. Okay, now I need to go around the entirety of the petals, and I always do them in an order of what's closest to me to what's furthest away. Okay, so if I look at these petals, this one is on top of these two, and these two are on top of this one. So the first one I want to bevel is that highest one. So I'm going to grab me about a medium-sized beveler here, and I'm going to bevel down the outside of that petal. I know my fingers are kind of in the way. I need a camera guy that works for coffee. And then as I get closer to the center, I'll lighten my taps just a tiny bit, just so that it doesn't look like this pedal sitting 2 inches over this pedal here, okay? And then let me go over to the other side of that same pedal, like that. And come over here, start on the next pedal. It doesn't matter which one of the other two I do. I'll do one, then I'll do the other, and then I'll do that bottom one last. I'm tooling kind of hard on this. I want to get some good depth on it. I'm looking at one of my guys that I work with here, and his tooling is really, really good, his floral tooling. And I notice it's a lot deeper than mine, even when we're using the same thickness of leather. This is about a 5/6 ounce right here that I'm using. So you can pound on it pretty good. All right, now I'm going to do that this pedal over here. I skipped ahead. I did this side of the bottom pedal since this one was already done, I guess. But anyway, I'll do this other side, and then I'll do the other side of the bottom pedal there. So there we go. All the beveling is done on it. Now I'm going to go back with a fluted veiner. And where all of those pedals come to a center point there, I'm going to take it and just follow the curvature of the pedal. I'm going to lean it really hard. I'm just using it as a stop. I'm using the very corner of the tool only. And I'm just giving it a nice little accent right at the base of each of the pedals. One of those tiny details that you won't notice if it's, or most people wouldn't notice if it's not there, but it sure does clean up. It gives a lot of definition to the base of the pedals. And there we are. Other than decorative swivel cuts, that flower is pretty much tooled. And when it comes to decorative swivel cut, I do all of them all over the entire thing at the very end. I don't do any of them while I'm tooling because I'm still doing a lot of spraying of the water and all that. And maybe it'll even end up getting dried out if I forget and leave it setting too long. Anyway, in those swivel cuts, they'll expand and shrink, and I don't want them to get ugly on me. So I always do them very last thing. Okay, now I'm going to show you doing one leaf, and then I'm going to go ahead and tool off camera all the rest of the flowers and leaves and get that done. So the first thing I do when tooling a leaf is I bevel around the stem that goes right through the middle of the leaf. Okay, and I'm just beveling down the outsides of the stem. If you look at a leaf, then the stem obviously sets up from the layer of the leafy part of it. It sounds dumb, but I know you know what I mean. All right. And then the very next thing I'm going to do is called a leaf liner, and it's this funny trapezoid shaped tool here. It's trapezoid shaped so that you don't have to have a right and a left tool. This one tool will do both sides. And what you do is you take one of the short edges of the trapezoid and you put it up against that line that we just beveled, and we hit it. And once again, we're leaning it, okay? We don't want to see that. We don't want to see the whole thing. We want it to fade out. And this is going to give the appearance of that leaf going down into that stem, kind of like a center shader on a flower, okay? So some people hit it, move it, hit it, move it, hit it, move it. Some people will walk it as they hit it. Some days I'm really good at one way, some days I'm not. So I'm going to try walking it, and if that doesn't work out, I'll kind of hit and move. So anyway. There we go. So I'm going to show you what that looks like there. You can see that one side of it is very nice and shaded, and it's much smoother than the other side that's just beveled. Okay. I failed to mention at the beginning of this is our Texas oak tooling leather. It's a very inexpensive when it comes. Vegetable tanned leather is expensive. That's all there is to it. Okay. But this is the least expensive of the veg tan leather that we carry, and it's really good stuff, actually. Honestly, out of all the stuff we carry, I really love tooling this stuff. I mean, it's great. Real clean leather, and it shows the tooling really well. It right there. It shows the tooling really well. It dyes well. It antiques well. It does everything really, really well, and it's not taken away from like our Herman Oak stock for me to use it. All right, now I'm going to use a thumbprint, okay? And this one, since I used the one with the long lines going the length of the tool, which I call the vertical lines, I guess, on the flower, I'm going to use horizontal lines on my my leaves, just so they look a little different, okay? Now this one, as I hit it, I'm going to once again, I don't want to see that, okay? I want to see that, okay? I want to see that fade out, okay? We'll start right at the very end here, and then on all of these little scallops, I'm just going to do one, and I keep the other end of the tool kind of 45-degree angle, facing towards the base of the base of the leaf and stem. Okay, that's what we end up with on one side, and then on the other side, there's only a couple of places we can hit it. But then these other places, as I move up, I'm going to lightly hit it, just so I've got a little bit of impression there, about like so. Now I'm going to come back with my fluted veiner again, okay? And you can use any veiner you want. I just like this little fluted one. It's a Berry King. It's a great little tool. I've used it so much that the ends of it, honestly, are all crushed and jacked. Let me try to focus there. There we go. I probably should replace this tool. The ends of it don't have lines on them anymore, and they're a little bit crushed. But, you know, when you got an old tool that you're really used to, you don't want to change it. All right, so with these, there's different ways that you could run it. Some people will run it to where the arches come. Let's say this is the stem right here. Some will run it where the arches come out and up, like this. Some will run it where they come up and out, this way, and then some will run it where they almost just run straight across. I personally like to lay it up and out. So I kind of lean it against the stem like that, and I follow the flow of the stem as I'm going up it. Just like that, okay? Now, what I have learned on the other side, when I do that, as I hit it, if I'm trying to twist it as I hit it and follow the flow of the stem, it doesn't seem to look right. So on the other side, instead of twisting it after every hit, I hit it at the same angle all the way up, and then it just seems to flow better on the concave side instead of the convex side over here. I hope that makes sense. But that's one thing I've found is when I try to twist it as I go up, it just looks wonky when I'm done. So I just hold it at the same angle. And this one got a little far from the stem. Let's see if I can, there we go. All right. So that's what I'm talking about. On this side over here, they're the same angle. On this side, as I went up the stem, I twisted it a little more every time. So up here you can see how much it angles out, and then up here it's almost laying flat compared to that one. Okay? Now once again, that's my leaf. It's done. There's nothing else I'm going to do to it except maybe a few decorative cuts when I come back to that point. But for now, I'm going to pause the camera, and when I come back, the other flower and the other 3 leaves will be tooled. We'll do a couple of scrolls, beveling, and show you what I do with them, and then we'll see how it goes. All right, good morning. You may notice I had a wardrobe change. Started this video 2 days ago, and it got super busy around the shop getting other stuff taken care of. I apologize that this is taking so long to get out. But I did come in very, very early this morning, and I went ahead and tooled more. So I went ahead, where we left off was I was going to do the flowers and leaves and get them all done, and I did. And then I went ahead and tooled the whole one side of the pattern so that as I tool the other side, I can point out things that are already done and kind of show you, hey, here's how I did that. I thought maybe that would be a good idea, and I thought maybe also that would hurry things along to get this video posted. I try really hard to get videos posted as quickly as I can, but I don't want to not put the time into the video and the instruction that people might need. So, sorry. Anyway, so without further ado, I'll readjust the camera back down to the desk, and we're going to start all that scroll work and everything, and I'll show you how I did what I do on it. I've said it a million times. Everyone's interpretation of a pattern is going to be different, and that's okay. Maybe it depends on the tools you have. Maybe it depends on your particular type of tooling or style of tooling, things like that. But when you're looking at, like this, Don Gonzalez drew this pattern for us. When you're looking at one of his toolings, you don't have to tool it exactly like he did. You know, take it, make it your own. We actually have an upcoming experiment that I'm working with a couple of guys, and we've got a really neat experiment coming up where we're going to do things like that, and you know, have people tool each other's patterns and stuff like that, so that you can see the differences where one guy drew the pattern, another guy tooled the pattern, but the guy that drew the pattern also is going to tool the pattern, and the differences in those. So I think it'll be a neat experiment, and I think it'll be a neat some upcoming videos between me and some other guys. So anyway, let's get to it. All right, one of my favorite things on these big loopy scrolls like this is to take a veiner and just kind of follow along the outside of it. And it gives it a lot of definition, and it also fills a very large space. Sometimes I'll take a pear shader and do some shading on them. Sometimes I'll use a lot of decorative cuts. But my favorite thing to do is to use this veiner here and kind of give it that scalloped look, okay? And I'm going to show you, on the video, we'll probably just tool this portion right here. But the same rules apply as you go up and you see the other areas and stuff, okay? So I like to take care of that veiner first. It's the same veiner we used on the leaves and the flower. Honestly, I've got 5 or 6 veiners in my toolbox, and this is 99% of the time the one I'll grab for everything. I just like it. It's nice and thin. It's got real nice scallops on it. Anyway, all right. So what I do to keep it smooth going around something like that, and to have the right spacing and all that, I'll turn it over to where the top of the scroll is facing me, okay? And I'll take this veiner and I'm gonna put it at the cut line, okay? And that's why we're doing this before we bevel, so that if we accidentally go over the cut line a little bit, once we bevel the background or the whatever's under it down, you won't see it, and it'll just look like it's wrapping around the edge of that, that scroll. Now, one of the things I always struggled with when I was a beginning tooler was keeping the flow right as I went around. And Jim Linnell taught me the trick to it, and it made so much sense once he did. I don't know how I never thought of that myself, other than I don't tool a lot of floral. So anyway, if there were a straight line drawn across the base of this, from tip to tip of this veiner, I would want that straight line to point at some sort of a spot. Like normally if I'm going around a more circular type scroll, I'd just right smack in the middle of it, okay? This one doesn't quite have a circular, I mean, it's round, but it's not a circle. So I want that imaginary line that would go across that tool to point at the very tip of the scroll right here, okay? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set it down, I'm going to point that line straight at that tip. I'm going to give it a little tap, okay? And again, I'm leaning it very, very hard. I don't want to see the whole tool. I just want the corner of it and maybe, you know, a half of it or so, okay? And then I'm going to move it up a little bit towards me here. I'm going to make sure and rotate it so that line is still pointing at the center, and give it another tap. Move it up a little bit, rotate it a little bit, tap it, okay? And like I said, I have it where the top of the scroll is pointed towards me, and I seem to be able to space them a little bit more evenly doing it that way. Okay, and in real time, I can do this a little bit quicker when I'm not explaining it. But as we go around, I just want to make sure that that imaginary line is always pointed at the center. Okay, and then where it finally kind of crests over right here, I stopped doing it. My last couple of hits faded out a little bit. I may do one more, fading it out just a tiny bit more. And there we go. I start out with them kind of close together, and then I space them out a little bit more as I go around. And I'm going to do that on both of these two scrolls that are in the area we're going to tool. Okay, so I'm going to do it over here. Now here, I can't see the base of the scroll because it's behind this other leaf. But I'm going to pretend I still can, and I'll start back here somewhere. All right. And the same rules apply. Keep turning it, keep moving it. Now you don't have to hit it hard. It's a tiny tool. The smaller the tool, the less pressure you need to apply when you hit it. Because you're not trying to send it through the leather, of course, and you want it to look consistent with the rest of your tooling. Okay, so there it is. That's what I do with that little veiner. It's not a huge deal. It's not a lot of hits. I mean, between those two, I probably hit it 15 times, maybe 18. Anyway, and then after that, I am going to shade all of the little leaves. Okay, now some people use a pear shader, some people use a thumbprint. I'm a pear shader kind of guy. Okay, so here I've got two checkered pear shaders, kind of a medium one and kind of a smaller one, I guess. And I'm just going to shade the ends of those leaves. Okay, and I'll put the point towards the tip of the leaf and hit it, and I'll kind of walk it around a little bit. And the big thing is, like every other tool that we use, let me get my scrap here. The big thing is, I don't want to see a pear, okay? I want it to fade, and I don't want it to have any hard edges. So you can see the difference in the one where I just smacked it on there, and then the one where I walked it around a little bit and faded its edges out. And it's just got a much smoother, more flowing type appearance, okay? So I'm gonna do that on all of these little leaves. Sorry, kind of hard for you to see if my water bottle's right in the middle of the picture again. One day I'll get used to filming while I do this. And I just give all of those areas some shade, all right? Now, I know it looks like it just, okay, I got all this nice shading here, but then I got nothing down here. Once I bevel that, that's going to be taken care of, okay? And I kind of let the shape of the, excuse me, the shape of the leaf dictate how much or little I do. Some of the thinner ones, I just do a little bit, but some of these fatter ones, of course, I need to fill some more area, so there's how we go. All right, and that's all of them in that little area. Well, I'm gonna grab my smaller one here and do this one right here. All right, now I'm going to bevel. Okay, and beveling is very difficult for a lot of people on these scrolls because they don't know which side of what lines to bevel. So I'm going to hope that I can simplify that a little bit by explaining what we're looking at here. Okay, here I have all these lines right here, and I have to decide what they are and what they do. The center one right here goes up to that leaf, so it is that leaf's stem. So it's the prominent part of that little bit of scroll work right there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll bevel it first, and I'll just bevel down around the outsides of it, around the outside. Okay, so there's one side of it. I'm going to flip it over here so I can bevel the other side of it. I'm not very good at beveling with the tool facing the other way. I will miss my line, so I always have to turn my project so that it's where I want it. There we go. So, now that I know what the main stem is, generally on most patterns that we're drawing for leather tooling, we're just going to bevel down from there, okay? So that would put this next stem right here underneath this stem, right? So this leaf right here looks like it is underneath that second stem. So I'll bevel this side of that line, and then once again, this leaf is under this leaf, so I'll bevel this side of that line. And then I'll flip it over, and I'll use the same concepts on the other side. Like that. And I don't worry about the tops of the leaves right now, where I would have to turn the beveler around and do the other side. I do all those little short bevels after I get the main parts of the stems done. That way I don't accidentally bevel the wrong side of something while I'm concentrating on, oh, which way do I go here? Okay, so again, this stem is on top. Let me get my pointer. This stem is on top of this one, so this one is probably going to be on top of that one. Okay, and beveling, you don't have to hit the tool with the same amount of pressure every time. When you get down here to the end, you want to kind of fade that bevel out a little bit. You don't want it to just be a hard line where you've stopped beveling. You want them to fade into each other, because that's what they would do if they were actually on a plant. Okay, so hold that up so you can see kind of what I've done there. And there's that section right there. Now, I can go back with that same beveler. This is just kind of a medium-sized beveler, but I have a tiny one here too. And I use the tiny one a lot of the time when I get up to the smaller areas. So like the top of this leaf right here, I'll use my smaller beveler and go ahead and define it some. I do try to use the biggest beveler I can use in an area, just because then I'll have less tool marks, okay? It has nothing to do with how often I have to hit the tool, because I'm going to hit it a lot anyway. But I'll have less tool marks if I use the biggest beveler that I can. So now that entire area has been beveled, okay? And right now it kind of looks like a little bit of a mess, but as we add other things and do our background and stuff like that, it's all going to clean up and it's all going to look great, okay? Now, when I get up here to these scrolls, the first thing I'm going to do is take my small beveler and do the really tight turns. And these scrolls are definitely the prominent part of that area, so I want to bevel them first anyway. Okay, so I did that tiny little turn there. Now I'm going to do this tiny little turn here. And much like what I talked about when we did the flowers, I try to bevel what's closest to me first, and then work my way to the background. And that helps you to not accidentally over bevel or bevel something that would be underneath and have those beveling marks on something that would be higher up, if that makes sense. Everything has to be looked at as if it's a 3D picture, because it needs to be a 3D picture. Okay, so if you don't look at it as a flat project, then you'll see it a little bit better. Again, I hope that makes even a little bit of sense. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish out the insides of those both of those scrolls all the way to the base of them. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to tool or bevel around the tops of those scrolls. This is a small project as far as, you know, it doesn't take up a lot of room on my bench, so it's so much easier to turn than, say, a belt or something like that, that every time I turn it, I've got 30, 40 inches of leather to work around my bench. I mean, I got to clean a lot more space off my bench to do that, and it gets kind of annoying. But until you learn and you're able to maybe turn the beveler away from you and tool away from you, okay, it's just the easier way to make sure that everything gets done correctly and you don't have a ton of tool marks. Okay, so now we definitely have a prominent scroll right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see, where's my pointer? this little stem of this scroll is on top of this leaf, and then this leaf is on top of this scroll. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tool that leaf. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and do the top and the bottom of it because they're both pretty big bevels, like so. Now I can go and tool or bevel the top of this scroll. All right, now I have this leaf behind it, so I'm gonna bevel it. Sorry, I know my hand is in the way, and I apologize. One day I'll be a big, important YouTuber, and I can afford a cameraman. But today's not the day. And I don't know too many camera people that would want to be up here at 3 a.m. when I want to be up here. All right, back to my small beveler, and I'm going to get these tiny little areas here that the big beveler won't fit in, like that. So that whole section right there is beveled, and we're going to move on, and whoop, not all of it yet. I've got some tiny little areas right here. That one creates a little bit of background, and then this is the back end of what would be that scroll right there. Okay? Now, the next tool I'm going to use is a mule foot, but not just any mule foot. This one's called a continuous mule foot. Okay? A standard mule foot looks like one little U, and you have to use it. Let me grab one out of my box. Hopefully I can find it because I don't use too many standard mule foots. Matter of fact, I don't even have one in my box. So anyway, when you're using a mule foot stamp, you want it to kind of cascade and fade out like this one tool does. Okay, these continuous mule foots are awful convenient to be able to get that nice and even and all that. However, if you have a single mule foot, you have the option too of being able to space them out a little bit and stuff like that. That is the drawback to the continuous mule foot, is that they're all going to be just like that. And I just kind of use it in areas where there's a lot of scrolls coming together, or leaves, stems, whatever, coming together. But I also like to use it at the base of my leaf. I think it adds a nice little touch right there. Okay, but then I'll also use it down here, and I'll hit it a little bit harder and get a lot more of it where the stems kind of come together. And yeah, it works out. So over here, I'll put it right about there. And in these two areas, that's the only places I want to put that, okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is my backgrounding, all right? Now, I really, really like checkered matting tools for my background, okay? This one is made, well, these are all made by Clay Miller, okay? This one right here is the little teardrop shape. It is a copy of, I believe, Craft Tool A98. And what I had Clay do is make me a whole set based off that. So I've got 2 or 3 that are smaller, 2 or 3 that are bigger, and some different shapes. Like this one is very, very long and skinny. And I love using it in areas like, where's my pointer? I love using it in areas like this where it gets super narrow and it goes into a point in between a couple of scrolls. Right there, right here, and right here. I use it to give that area some definition, because after we've done all that beveling, those where that point is, it mushes together, and that tool will give it some definition in that area, okay? So I'm going to take it, and I'm just going to, in all of those areas that I see immediately, I'm going to go ahead and just hit it in those areas to background that little point. And there are, again, mine were made by Clay Miller to my specifications, but there are plenty of tools out there that can do this that are not custom-made tools. So if you've got a bunch of craft tools and stuff, there is a tiny little craft tool pointed backgrounder like this, okay? So there we are. All I've done is I've hit it in these tiny little areas in between the scrolls where they come to a sharp point. Now I'm going to go back with that little teardrop one. I use it for more than anything, that A98. And then I'm just going to fill in the rest of the backgrounding. And all of the backgrounding will look like that area right there when it's done. Okay? Now there may be areas where this A98 type stamp doesn't fit, and then I have to go back to that little skinny one and put it in those areas. And I have to be very careful because it's a little bit harder to get even and nice throughout that entire area. But I really, really enjoy my checkered backgrounding tools. Backgrounding is one of those. Some people use bar grounders. Some people use cedars of different shapes and sizes. Jürgen Volbach from Germany, that's one of his things. He'll go through here with a large round seed and do all the major areas, and then he'll go back with smaller cedars of different sizes, and it creates a really neat effect where it almost kind of looks like bubbles, is the best way I can describe it, I guess. But he has some really cool backgrounds that he does. And then I know he also has had Barry King make him some tools that are special to him, that he can get different textures and stuff like that. The Pebble tool is another cool background, and it basically kind of the same thing, lots of little bitty circles in there, and it looks really nice. All right, so in that whole area that I've done, that's all the backgrounding, and it really cleans everything up and makes it look good. Now that I'm looking at that on camera, though, I see an area where I need to pay a tiny bit more attention. And you want to get it as nice and flat and even as you can. You don't want it to look all lumpy, and you know, you want lots of tool coverage in those areas. You don't want it to look uneven. So there we go. There's those areas right there. Now, again, I'm going to turn the camera off, and I'm going to tool all the rest of this in that exact same manner. And when I come back, we'll talk about swivel knife cuts and finishing up and stuff like that. And then we're going to be tooled. It'll be time to start coloring this and then assembling a purse, and that's the part that I'm excited to get to. So here we go. I'm going to pause the camera, and I'll be back. All right, and we're back. So here we are. We have all of the backgrounding done, all of the tooling done. Now I need to add some decorative swivel cuts on this side so that it matches this side. Okay, now decorative swivel cuts, I am not afraid to admit, are the bane of my existence. I'm pretty good with a swivel knife, but I'm not very good with grace and flow. I am a bull in a china shop when it comes to things like that, all right? So I am going to go ahead and strap up my swivel knife here. And on these little flowers, like, the petals aren't very long. So the standard swivel cuts that I would normally do on a flower like this don't really fit. So what I've done on this side is I've started at my flower center, and I've given each flower petal just a couple of cuts coming out to kind of give it some dimension and some depth, all right? So what I've done is I start out with a heavy one, heavy, like I'm pushing hard on the swivel knife, and then I lighten out as I come out of the flower center, and I try to make them kind of flow with the petal, all right? And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to do it on every petal, though. Again, these are not the absolute most professional of decorative cuts. If you study Don Gonzalez, Joe Mealing, one of those guys. Look at their stuff and look at their decorative swivel cuts, and you will see where I probably should not be teaching this course. Anyway, okay, and then on these leaves, this is a perfect example of a leaf right here. Sometimes I would just do one cut, depending on the size of it. Something like that. But on these bigger leaves, I do two. Okay. And usually the shorter one will be at the more curved side, and then the longer one will kind of follow the inside flow of the leaf itself. Okay. And again, I know that mine don't have the grace and flow that some others do, and I absolutely hate that, and I really should sit down for weeks on end until I get this right. But I've said it many, many times, floral tooling is not my forte. It is not what I enjoy the most, so it's hard for me to want to sit down and practice it when I don't really enjoy it. I love tooling cartoons and pictures and things like that. But it is what it is. So there it is, right there. So I'm going to give this piece a real good once over and make sure I've cut absolutely everything I need to cut and tooled everything I need to tool, because the next thing I'm going to do is put some oil on it and let it set. And yeah, then we're going to move on to the next video, which is where I'm going to color this. And we'll do, I have not decided yet. I have to look through my stuff and see what I want to inlay in the middle of it. And that will dictate what color I want to maybe dye the ring. Do I want to just dye the borders? Do I want to dye the flowers and the borders? What do I want to do? Like on this one here, I did golden brown on the entire thing and antiqued it, but it also got this big pretty blue gator on the middle of it. So that worked out. I have to look and see what I want to inlay and everything before I decide what colors I want to use. And I'm really thinking about just dyeing the border and the background, leaving the flowers natural and the leaves and stuff, and then antiquing everything and kind of seeing where that goes. But that'll be determined on what I choose to inlay in it. So there we go. Again, I'm going to take some oil and spread all over this thing. That will rehydrate the leather a little bit where I've wet and let it dry and wet and let it dry. It needs that. And so, yeah, I'm going to do that. Sorry, that is way zoomed in. I apologize. Let me get out of there. So anyway, back there. All right, so I hope you learned something from this video. If you didn't need this video at all, then you didn't even make it this far, so that's fine too. But anyway, until next time, I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and this was tooling the ring on the Canteen purse. Talk to you soon.